wonderful. Well, thank you all so much for joining us for a trip to Cambodia with travel photographer Jack Holmes. The Angkor civilization began and flourished over a millennium ago. Travel with Jack Holmes to Cambodia as he investigates ancient temples and culture in modern Siem Reap, digs for origins near Battambang, and visits the massive central lake Tonle Sap. I'm sure I mispronounced all of that, and I apologize. Jack is a travel photographer and owner of Images from Near and Far at Western Avenue Studios nearby in Lowell. He's a retired high school teacher. He previously served as president of the Greater Lynn Photographic Association, as well as the gallery manager of the Loading Dock Gallery in Lowell. Jack regularly gives these armchair travel presentations to senior centers and libraries in the area. So all 62 of us, let's give a big virtual round of applause to Jack for joining us here today. And Jack, you can take it away. Thanks so much.
Thank you very much, Robert. Thank you so much. And thank you all for joining me. I've been a traveling photographer for a handful of decades, actually maybe a little bit more than one hand. And thanks for Zoom traveling with me to Cambodia today. We'll visit Angkor Wat, some temples near Siem Reap and Battambang, and the large lake Tonle Sap. In 2018, my wife and I were in Battambang for 2.5 weeks of an archaeology dig, and we visited Siem Reap on weekends. In 2002, my family visited Siem Reap, Tonle Sap, and many Angkor temples, so I've been there twice now. Battambang and Siem Reap are in the northwest of Cambodia near the Thai border. It's a 3-hour drive on highways 5 and 6 between the two cities. Angkor Wat is just to the north of Siem Reap, and the airport is just to the south. Tonle Sap is a river basin lake that grows and shrinks with the seasonal rains. A ferry runs between Siem Reap and Phnom Penh through July through March when the water depth permits. Tonle Sap is really a pretty shallow lake. A tourist map of Siem Reap shows a place much more developed in 2018 than in 2002. In 2002, the airport was very small. Money was exchanged outside the front door with local money changers. Then and now, the dollar is the prime currency. We stayed in a guest house near the central market. Almost all tourist services were located in this neighborhood at that time. In 2002, neither our hotel nor the buildings in this view existed. Now the city is larger with a well-developed tourist industry. This is a street hawker from 2002. This could be 2002 or 18. Notice the Wat in the back. We'll visit that later. And the cell tower behind the place. So I think this is a modern view, along with trucks and a lot of motorbikes. Not many bicycles, though. Street vendors still occupying prime space on the sides. And tapas is a modern Western concept that many tourists understand. There's a fine Mexican Khmer restaurant in a former neighborhood. This 2018 view of our neighborhood with the central market on the left and down the street our guest house on the right. In 2002, Champi was our guest house with rooms on the second floor and a restaurant on the first floor. 2002, breakfast on the veranda. The old pictures you'll recognize are a little different than the modern digital ones. Central Market in the background. This girl and her sister were there every morning in 2002. Here she and other kids were accompanying 2 tourists. The guest house said, don't give them anything. Most of the guests gave them something on their last day of stay. 2000 view from our breakfast table over to the market. Here, 2018, an afternoon view from the same table. Anchor is really a pretty decent beer, actually. Watching the day go by here. Business outside the market. A bicycle, not many of those. Entrance to the market. Entrance to the market then and now and the interior is still pretty much the same. There's more things, I think, in it now than there was back in 2002. Back outside. 2018, rice fields on Highway 5, just north of Battambang. Battambang is Cambodia's third largest city. This statue of Ta Bum Dong sits at the entrance to the city. Legend has it that he used this magic stick to vanquish and replace a cruel king. Let me pause for just a second and fix this door. There, they are back again. It was starting to bounce in the wind. Anyway, this shepherd he was, and I'm going to say this was probably around the year 800 AD that this legend was originally set up. Hello Kitty welcomes us to our guest house. After we get settled in, we head into the city center. This is a very typical kind of vehicle we're going to see in the street. A motorbike attached to a trailer. Sometimes there is no trailer. Motorbikes are quite common. We needed to stock up on some fruits. In particular, we're going to be stocking up here on rambutan and jackfruit. Tasty, tasty. And when you're in town, there's always need for some coconut ice cream. The street vendor is opening a coconut shell. A group of a dozen bought him out so he could go home early that day. Coconut shell with the ice cream and a little bit of peanuts on top. Very tasty. Next day, our first visit was to Wat Ek Nam. Our archaeology dig was a 30-minute commute outside of town to Prasat Besat. Wat Ek Nam is a popular location to visit by both locals and tourists. A few tourists happen to come to this town. Modern Wat entrance and a Buddha, sitting Buddha, kind of next door. Kids playing soccer in the open space at the pedestal of the Buddha. Behind Wat Ek Nam is the ruined Hindu temple that was constructed 1,000 years ago. The pillaged ruin is mostly rubble with a single tower still standing. And my wife is photographing some cats, some kittens. There are a lot of cats and a lot of potsherds and cats everywhere. This ceramic could be recent or it could be 100 years old. The single tower. Inside the tower, a guide is explaining the features on the ruins with the modern Wat in the background. He was talking about these carvings on the side portals that still remain in this particular window. Little Wat behind the ruins. Actually in front of the ruins. End of a long day for us. And the next day we're traveling to Prasat Besat. This is commuters in the countryside. Motorbikes are the predominant vehicle. Here, a motorbike with a trailer carrying a cow. Let's see many trucks. A pink Hello Kitty house on the road into the village. Village is somewhat short, generally a one-story place. the village business strip is. It's actually pretty small, but it's quite similar to what they have, but certainly much less developed than in Battambang. Modern Wat Basad entrance is beside a Cambodian reconstruction project. Our project, our introduction to this project, the reconstruction, is conducted by professionals from the Angkor National Museum. Here a photograph of the original single tower and a photograph of some of the work that they're doing. We would be digging in a nearby unexplored field for artifacts related to the origins of the Angkor culture dating to the period of this particular Wat, probably over 1,000 years ago. Restoration work in progress. Notice the crane. Crane lifts quarter-ton sandstone blocks, sets them kind of near place, and then they're fitted in place by hand. Here are some original artifacts that will eventually be introduced to the reconstructed Wat. The entrance to our work site was out of the village a few miles. Again, one of the very few bicycles. Through the neighbor's yard, the owner's yard, past their house, a blouse drying on the fence here, past the tractor, and the barn. We would be working in the space in the back. Different view. Here's some kids at work. They're fetching water from the local well in the cistern. They're having a lot of fun at my expense. You don't see too many Westerners in this space. Girls carrying their water pail. And past the cows in the field, the boys carrying theirs. And they're carrying these to the cisterns here, which are behind the barn. We're going to be working in the field behind this fence eventually, in the cornfield. Our project was the first non-Cambodian dig in the area. Hence, the fact that we were Westerners in this space made us tourist attractions. Anyway, this dig had to be blessed by local religious and community leaders. The dig was in the cornfield behind the fence here. The laying out of the blessing ceremony. This lady is the owner of the property, and we recognize her blouse that we saw hanging when we came in. Making of fruit baskets. The monks arrived by motorbike. The monk and two novices are being presented with gifts. The ceremony was conducted by a local leader. Notice this pig's head. We see that again later. It's an important thing, apparently. Ceremony, and the ceremony ended. The monks depart on the motorbikes, and the novices are carrying the presents. Our dig was an Earthwatch expedition project that was looking into origins of the Angkor culture and is focusing on the common people who would lived near the Wat but weren't in the Wat. Our group receives a pre-digging briefing from the prime researcher here in green. Her graduate student assistants are here in the bottom right. We were doing this project in late May, at the very, very beginning of the rainy season, for two reasons. First, because the clay could be more easily dug in when it was kind of wet, or could have been wet. And secondly, the ladies had just gotten out of university for the spring semester. Our group of Earthwatch volunteers possess no particular professional experience as archaeologists. They just have a willingness and a passion for the pursuit and an experience in Cambodia. Local workers here are preparing a dig shelter. In June, it's sunny, hot and humid during the day with a gusty mid-afternoon rainstorm. Our team was made of a prime researcher and her aides, two handfuls of volunteers, Earthwatch volunteers like my wife and I, and then local workmen like these gentlemen. We were frequently visited by some local adults as well as some of the kids we saw carrying water. The shelter is ready, and they're beginning to lay out the test trenches. We're going to be doing 2 test trenches in this cornfield, and each trench is going to be 1 meter by 2 meters, and we're going to dig down 2 meters deep in planned layers. 2 meters is about 6 2/3 feet. Standard documentation photographed, ID board, size of the stick, 6-stick size, the direction north. Let me go back here. This is a pot shard that's in the space as well as a corn stalk sprouting right over here. Here, 2 test trenches started being dug, each with their little team. Many could work in the trench when it was not deep. And you notice the kind of tools that we're working with, dirt buckets, artifact baskets, trowels and brooms and digging sticks. And for comfort, diggers wore knee pads and almost always gloves because this clay soil could be pretty tough. Here there's soil typing. Different layers have slightly different color and composition. My first find of the dig was a clay pot rim here, and the trowel and glove for size. Other kinds of finds, ceramic and pot shards, and they're saved in these baskets. This shard is being measured and color matched. Bag shards were eventually washed and cleaned, and then rebagged when they were completely dry. Here they're sifting dirt from the trenches, looking for small missed shards and bone and other artifacts that might be of interest. Here I am in the trench. We're working on a larger piece of pottery that was on the edge of the trench. Large pieces would be measured and photographed and located in 3 dimensions in the layer. Once that happened, then they were stored and recorded. Some fragments actually fit together like they were a jigsaw puzzle. These pieces were going to be fit together. A total of 6 fragments altogether. Rims and designs along the sides are indicative of the date of production. Here they're sifting dirt at the table. This is the dirt that came out. Notice somebody working in the cornfield in the back. And this fellow was one of the local water boys, and he often came to watch us work. When the trench got deep, the local workers did the majority of the digging, and access into the trench was by a short removable ladder. It was very hot and humid inside that trench. When I took the place of one of these fellas, I was able to stay in it for about 15 minutes before I had to come back out. Note the man here on the right. He has lost his lower left leg below the knee to a Khmer Rouge landmine that was in the fields nearby. 2 meters down, at the end of the dig, these white tags identify different soil layers and then the recording at the bottom. Trenches are covered with the plastic sheeting at the close of each day's dig. At the end of the project, it was filled back in with dirt that we had removed and would have been sifted. Commuting back into Bottom Bomb as these folks commute out of town, end of the day. We stayed in Siem Reap on weekends before, during, and after the project, and we hired local guides with tuk-tuks for those free days. One day at Tonle Sap, another on a food tour, and another here's Wat Prom Rat. This nice temple that was near our hotel, front hall, middle hall with a sitting bodhisattva, and in the back hall, the reclining Buddha. There are a lot of really lovely gardens here in these temples. There's a small street Wat down the street towards the Angkor National Museum that we were indirectly affiliated with. Apopo. Apopo is an NGO that trains African rats to sniff out landmines. And now these rats find the landmines by the smell of the explosive. So there is a significant amount of training that goes into these. You're a handler. Diffuse landmine here in situ. Here's a retired minesweeper here for this demonstration. When we were there in 2002, you could buy T-shirts that had this picture on it of landmine, danger landmines. Kind of a gruesome T-shirt, actually. Tethered rats they don't set the landmine off because they're so light. And they can search a tennis court size space in about 30 minutes. And that's far faster than dogs and 100 times faster and safer than people with mine detectors. We took an evening tasting tour outside of town into one of the neighborhoods. This neighborhood food stall was working with barbecue meat skewers. And then another family stall, they were working with same kind of thing, but they also had land snails. Think French escargot. They are the same thing. Night market on the road to Angkor Wat. Notice all the motorbikes quite up for the evening meals. Very popular with locals, and when we were there, we did not see any foreigners. Many kinds of tasty foods. Some of these kinds of foods we see on the menus in Lowell, in Cambodian restaurants. Tasty beverages. And a special treat, the guide said. A special treat. A soft-boiled duck egg with the duck embryo still inside. There are two versions, an 18-day egg and a 23-day egg. The guide said the 23-day egg was better because of the texture. Neither my wife nor I could eat it, and I have not seen it in Lowell on the menu. Morning commute into Siem Reap as we are heading out to Tonle Sap. The lake is actually a long river system in a depression basin. Its lake volume varies tremendously over the year due to the seasonal rains. Well, the lake itself is actually quite shallow even when it expands. And climate change is affecting the levels and the fishing and the farming output that's in the neighborhood. This whole region is a food basket for the country, with both fish and rice being the prime commodities here. The land is quite flat, water buffalo in a rice paddy. In 2018, this modern access to the village was not there. Not there in 2002. Along the lake, homes are built on stilts. I think this place, the lake levels come up to the base of this house. but the height of the still space is dependent upon the depth of the lake, typical depth of the lake. Lake is lowest before as the rainy season begins in June, but usually fills by the end of the season. 2002, the road to the ferry that goes to Phnom Penh. This was my first trip to an underdeveloped country, and I found it very exciting. There's a pig's head again. Very interesting. This young fella's truck was styrofoam and rusty cans and some dowels. It was also very sadly very, very poor. 2018, it looks nowhere near as poor, but otherwise it doesn't look that different. And this time we toured by boat. We were here a lot longer than in 2002. Some river traffic. We're faster than these kids. Beginning of June, it's the beginning of the rainy season. Notice the stilt heights. Now the water's going to come up to probably in this region here by the end of the rainy season. And the houseboat on the river. Houseboats are family boats. This family's bringing some fish back in. There's a fishing weir in the river being tended by this gentleman. That's his boat in the back. This is just a net this young fella is swimming in. I don't know if he was working it or just recreating. River traffic. More fishing weirs, and this is out on the lake, Tonlé. Home and businesses, floating platforms out on the lake. These boats, I don't know if they're buying or selling, but they pulled up close. It's got a fish, so my suspicion is they're selling. We hired another guide for a couple of days of temple visits near Siem Reap. Angkor Wat, central to all tourist visits that come into Cambodia, into Siem Reap. The strategy for visiting temples is to buy your multi-day entry ticket in the afternoon of the day preceding your visits, your temple visits. You need to bring with you an unattached passport photo that will be attached to your ticket and laminated. The line for this ticket is almost non-existent. The line for the day tickets can be an hour or two in some cases, and longer during the heavy travel season. This ticket gets you into all temple sites as soon as they open, which is at least an hour before the first rush of day tour groups. And this ticket is good for a week or more and saves money after the second day. 2002, the iconic reflecting pond view. This is on the left side of the west entrance. Yeah, this is the National Geographic drone photograph of Angkor Wat. It's the largest religious complex in the world, larger than the Vatican. Our original archaeology was to have been done in this top left region outside of the complex itself. But a few months before our scheduled dig, politics intervened. A dig permit was canceled by the newly elected party in power. The opposing party, who was sympathetic to the United States, had granted the permit long ago when they were in power, and the new party decided to cancel it at the last minute. So Earthwatch and the Angkor National Museum got together and we affiliated with them. So our dig was going to be in Baden-Baden, somewhat attached to their dig, and not in Angkor Wat as it had originally been planned. 2002, tourists entering Angkor Wat from the western entrance. At that time, though, when we were there, it was not that busy, because there are a lot of foreign visitors when there were there. A lot of quiet places you could find. 2018, we're on the right side of this western entrance causeway. The crowds, even at the back east entrance. This is not too far from where we would have been digging, 100 yards or so. And here you can find some quiet views if you're a little bit patient and avoid the people around. This is the Earthwatch group we participated with. International group they were. Director of the Angkor National Museum, who was with us in the field, he's explaining this wall carving. A portion of this kind of carving is found in Lowell in Cambodia, Asian Center. Colorful centuries ago they were. Now they're really pretty faded. But there are really a lot of very, very fine wall carvings in this sandstone. And again, off the main set, you have to find some really nice, quiet views. Early morning, and a monk is awaiting visitors to give them alms. In 2002, you could climb pretty much anywhere you dared. It was steep, and a lot of people used the sides. Now you find a lot of crowds. It's a tour group from, I think they're from China. And here is an Australian documentary film crew at work. And just inside was one of the cameras that they were using. They're going over the scene that's going to be filmed. These are dances they're going to be performing for the 2018 documentary. And they're very, very similar to what we saw in a 2002 stage production that was run for tourists. And both of these, they emulate the drawing that came from the walls, these 1,000-year-old wall carvings. This abandoned out-of-the-way wall in Angkor Wat has an 800-year-old sequence of drawings in progress, from the rough sketch on the left here, left center, all the way over to finished sketches on the right. This region would have been abandoned when it was taken over by Siamese invaders in about 1200. Entrance to Angkor Thom. This has this face on 4 sides. It's the western entrance. And this is a National Geographic article view of a similar temple that would have been made back about 800 years ago. Notice again where they would have had that skeleton of the temple ruins now. All the decorations have long since fallen. These signs document the rehabilitation of this temple. Old photograph, original photograph, and then what it looked like in 2010, I believe. Some work in the complexes is financed by Cambodia, but some work is also financed by other governments, especially the Japanese, and then some other private NGOs. 2018 now has stabilized grounds for the entrance with boardwalks to control traffic and rubble where they still want it to lay. In 2002, we had free roam of this space. movie scenes were filmed here, and Lara Croft, Tomb Raider, was one of them. I think she came out of there. And now people who were there filming are tourists with camera phones and some big boy cameras too. Preservation and traffic control is a prime concern now. The jungle still wants to take over, and preservation is still is a big factor in some of these temples. 2002, a view of this ficus tree, and the same tree in 2018, taken from the right side. Here, preservation is the focus. And in this part, takeover is happening. This interior corridor underneath one of the towers has a plank flooring. But in some other places, you can still find the original flooring that goes in. 2002, a local orchestra of landmine amputees played for donations at the west entrance to Angkor Thom. Then and now, souvenir stalls are still found there. It's a police vehicle on a motorcycle. Iconic entrance features. Some features like this you can find in Lowell in the Asian Center on Middlesex. Note the Temple Preservation Project is a joint Cambodian and Japanese project here. This is not a particularly large temple. Its work was minimal that they did, and pretty much it was done just to control traffic. But the fact that it was so small and so not well visited, you can have a lot of time and space to occupy yourself in detail and explore details. Details like windows. I especially found these windows quite interesting. I'm not sure if this is takeover or preservation. Probably takeover. Single tower remaining, certainly being taken over. And underneath that tower, the single passageway. This one's got a plank flooring. Note here in the far left front, this is environmental monitoring equipment which is installed in this little temple. Original entrance, the rubble of what was there is now gone. More windows, portals. Now, this is my ride, a tuk-tuk trailer attached to a motorbike. And here is the attachment, and they can change what's attached to that bike. Bante Saray Temple. They usually have pretty good signs outside these temples. For me, Bante Saray was the most beautiful temple. It was small, manageable, lovely gardens. The remains of a stone corridor, and the superior structure has disappeared. The land snail. We're not going to eat this one. This monkey plaza. Able to explore this with nobody there. Here again, you can climb as you wish. And for me, Banteshwar is the prettiest of these towers, of these temples. It's 3 o'clock in the afternoon in the rainy season, and the rain is approaching. The wind is blowing cool along the ground. The rain's going to be here in less than 5 minutes. And the rain ends the day, and I stay in Cambodia. Let me give you a few words about Earthwatch for a moment. It's an organization that supports citizen science fieldwork projects, both domestically and internationally. They do about 50 a year. My international colleagues and I were paying volunteers for the Cambodia dig. The expedition donation and all associated expenses, airfare, hotels, etc., are tax deductible. All living arrangements when you're on the project are included in your donation. So except for the coconut ice cream or maybe a bunch of rambutan, we really didn't spend anything. Any data gathering skills that you might need on the project, you can be taught in a few minutes. I've done about a dozen Earthwatch projects now. Yeah. Anyway, thank you for Zoom traveling with me to Cambodia. I can be reached at 122 Western Avenue, studio number 377 in Lowell, or by email, jackholmes@yahoo.com. And I'd be happy to answer any questions that you might have. Robert, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jack. Wonderful job as expected. We've got about 70 folks still with us. We've got about 14 minutes. So if folks, as Jack said, have any comments or questions, please get them into the chat or into the Q&A. Camilla says, thank you. I agree. An anonymous attendee asks, in what areas did most, well, maybe you can make sense of this question, Jack. In what areas did most areas occur between your two trips?
Well, we're in the northwest. Siem Reap and Battambang are in the northwest. We have never been to Phnom Penh, and we did not take the ferry down, and we have not taken the Mekong River down into Vietnam, so just the northwest.
All right, hopefully that answers whatever that question was. Roberta asks, what's your favorite Cambodian restaurant in Lowell?
Whoa. I go to a number of them, but unfortunately in the past 2 years, because of COVID, I haven't been to very many of them. So it's difficult to say which ones are. There's a place called Simply Khmer, which a lot of folks recommend. And in near the central part on Middlesex, in what would be called Cambodia Town, there are 3 or 4 restaurants near the Palin Center. Red Rose is one, and the Palin Center is another. There's some others around town, so it's kind of like go to places where there are people and explore the menu. I did not find any of the soft-boiled duck eggs in Lowell, so it's all good food.
Roberta says that she's been to Cambodia 3 times, most recently in April of this year. Her son works for Conservation International there. He has a Cambodian wife and 2 little ones, and they're visiting in September, and she wants to bring them to Lowell. And she thanks you for your wonderful presentation. An anonymous attendee asks, were the dig volunteers welcomed by the local people, or were there some resentment over money spent on the dig versus what they had for their own living expenses?
No, I didn't experience any kind of resentment for our presence there. In 2002, we were kind of odd in that we were tourists bringing money in, and everything was very central to the market, and they were just building new spaces outside. Now I think they recognize that Siem Reap, Angkor Wat, and all of the Angkor temples are a major influx of Western dollars. So they welcome it. They really welcome you there. Battambang doesn't see too many tourists, I don't believe. So we were somewhat of a tourist attraction when we were there, but at no time did we feel any resentment whatsoever.
Daniel asks, did you feel safe in Cambodia? It
Yeah.
seems to have become a popular tourist area.
Very, very much so. I don't feel unsafe in any of those kinds of places. No, I never felt unsafe in Cambodia or Vietnam either, for that matter.
Marion says, a very interesting program. The temple carvings were lovely. Thank you. Nancy says, thank you. Your photography was wonderful. And she's wondering, does Cambodia have any sort of problem with vandalism?
Vandalism only in the sense that, for me, as far as I can recognize, only in the sense that people might pick up things and take them away. Like we saw a lot of pot shards in Battambang. There were no signs that said you couldn't take them, no signs that said you could take them. So, if you were willing to, if you wanted to pick up pottery shards from some of those places, I'm sure you could, but it's probably not a good idea. Like in the national parks, they tell you don't take the rocks and don't take this and don't take that. Right. So it's take pictures, but don't take things. I did not see any graffiti in the places we were. No, I didn't see any graffiti there at all, really.
Huck asks, can you tell us more about the Monkey Plaza? It sounds like an interesting place.
The Monkey Plaza was small. When we were there, I tried to wait until there was nobody in it so I could shoot it a little bit. But after I got one picture, then people came in. There was a small group, and I never really got more pictures. I would recommend Googling Bantay Srei, Bantaysrei, and then see what it has to say about the whole temple. It's really quite lovely.
Linda says, this was fabulous. Thank you. Mary asks, what were your favorite fruits, and are any of them available in this area?
Oh, fruits are hard to figure out. Jackfruit was tasty. Rambutan was good. Sometimes we could get lychee. That's tasty. And sometimes you can find that. I have not done this, but you could go into some of the Southeast Asian markets in Lowell, possibly in Lynn, and then see what they have available. And ask the people in the store. What's good? What's good right now? They're all quite tasty, though.
And let's see. Wendy had a question. How long do landmines stay active?
Until they are deactivated. They are a constant danger. And when we were in our space, you probably might have noticed that some well-trodden paths. People are advised, and people who live there know, you don't go wandering off those paths because there could very well be landmines. Khmer Rouge was quite prevalent in this northwest of Cambodia, and so a lot of landmines are there. It's a very, very bad thing. 2002, you see a lot of people with missing lower limbs and occasionally a missing arm. 2018, we didn't see quite as many, but the few that when we did see some, they had prosthetics now, like the gentleman who was digging in the trench in Battambang. They're still there. You have to be real careful.
Roberta recommends going to Whole Foods for unique fruit, including jackfruit. Yeah. And I wanted to mention before we wrap up that our next armchair travel presentation is with the traveling librarian, Jeff Claps. That's going to be on Tuesday, August 16th, so 4 weeks from today at 2 o'clock. And the country we're traveling to is Norway. And I totally suspect that we're going to have Jack back with us sometime in the fall. And that is TBA, we'll say. But Jack, do you have any last words for the group before we start to wrap up?
No. I would just say that if you're going to travel to Cambodia, the heavy travel season is, the comfortable travel season is in the winter, away from the rain season. But so many Westerners go in the summer because that's when they have their vacation time. And you can expect some rain in the late afternoons on those days, but it's lovely, lovely. Just prepared for a little bit of rain in the late afternoon and you're good.
So I want to thank Jack for his wonderful presentation and his ability to answer all the questions. I want to thank the audience. At one point, I think we had around 75 folks or so, which is wonderful for
Thank you.
for a Tuesday afternoon. I want to thank the Friends of the Library for being the primary sponsor. Want to thank the libraries in Topsfield, Ashland, Newburyport, Methuen, and Clinton for helping spread the word. And look for that email tomorrow from me for those who are watching live with a link to a feedback survey, a link to this recording, and more information about some upcoming virtual armchair travel presentations. So thank you all. Thank you, Jack, and everyone have a great rest of your day.
Thank you. Take care.
You too, Jack. Bye.